The Christmas lights were still blinking when I realized my own son had already stolen my life. I'm 68 years old, and I never thought I'd be scared of the kid I raised with my bare hands. Not scared like he'd hurt me physically, no. Worse than that. Scared because I finally understood how easy it had been for him to take everything while I was busy trusting him. My husband died 12 years ago. Heart attack. One minute he was grading papers at the kitchen table. The next minute I was signing hospital forms with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. He was a public school teacher his whole life. Never made big money, but he believed in doing things right. Paying bills on time, not owing anyone anything. Leaving this world clean. When he passed, all he left behind was a small pension, our modest house, and a couple of pieces of land he'd bought back when prices were dirt cheap. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. And I promised him standing over his grave that I'd protect it. For our son, I raised that boy alone after that. Worked, saved, clipped coupons, skipped vacations. Every dollar I had was for his future. College, business ideas. "Mom, I'll make you proud," he used to say. And for a long time I believed him. Now he's a so-called successful entrepreneur. Nice car, sharp suits. Always in meetings. People love him. They tell me all the time, "You must be so proud." And I smile, because that's what moms do. But behind closed doors, he talks to me like I'm outdated software. "Mom, you don't understand how things work anymore. Mom, let me handle the finances, you'll just stress yourself out. Mom, trust me. I've got this." And because I loved him, I did. It started small. He offered to manage my pension payments, so the bank doesn't mess anything up. Then he said it'd be safer if the house paperwork was updated. Just paperwork. Nothing changes. When I hesitated, he sighed like I was a burden. "Why are you making this so hard?" he asked once. "I'm doing this for you." That line stuck. I didn't want to be difficult. I didn't want to be the old mom holding him back. So I signed. Again. And again. By the time December rolled around this year, Christmas felt different. Quieter. The house looked the same old ornaments, same artificial tree, but something felt off. Like I was a guest in my own living room. My son came over Christmas morning, same as always. Hugged me. Smiled. Put a small wrap box under the tree. "Just one more thing, Mom," he said casually, pulling out a folder. "Year-end stuff. Nothing major." I picked up the pen, and right before I signed, his phone rang. He walked into the other room to take it. He didn't close the door. And that's when Christmas finally showed me who my son really was. Because the words I heard next were never meant for my ears. I couldn't sleep that night. The lights on my little Christmas tree blinked softly, casting shadows across the living room. And I stared at the ornaments, my fingers tracing the names I'd written on each one over the years. Michael, Jennifer. The names felt heavy now, like weights tied to my chest. All those years, all those sacrifices. And this is how it ends? I kept replaying our conversation in my head. "Mom, we're celebrating at my in-laws this year." Those words hit me harder than I ever expected. Not the "we're not coming" part, I could have brushed that off, but the way Michael said it, cold, rehearsed, almost mechanical. Like he was reading a script Jennifer had written for him. I got up, wandered to the kitchen, and made coffee. My hands shook. I counted in my head, rent, wedding contributions, car repairs, groceries, little gifts, all those temporary loans, $43,800, almost $44,000 gone in 3 years. 3 years of my life poured into a black hole called family. And the irony was Christmas was supposed to be about love, not betrayal. I sat by the window, watching the snow settle on my small yard. Everyone else's homes looked warm, glowing. Inside, I felt like a ghost in my own house. The realization sank deeper. I had been a fool with good intentions, blinded by love, letting my son and his wife run over me like I was some kind of stepping stone. And that's when it hit me. It wasn't just money. Jennifer had calculated every move, every smile, every plea, every "we're struggling" mom text. It was all strategy. Michael wasn't oblivious. He was complicit, even if he claimed he didn't know the full scope. They had planned this. Slowly, meticulously. And Christmas, the one day I thought would be sacred, was just another tool for their manipulation. My chest tightened, anger mixed with fear. I wasn't weak. I'd survived a widowhood, worked double shifts, raised a son alone. And yet here I was, almost 71, nearly drained financially, emotionally drained, and completely under their thumb. I realized I had to act. I had to stop this, before it went further, before I lost everything that remained my home, my dignity, my peace. I pulled out my laptop, the same one I'd used for decades, and started tracking every bank transfer, every text, every little favor they'd asked for. Documenting it all. If I was going to stand my ground, I needed facts. Cold, undeniable facts. Numbers that couldn't lie. Evidence. Hours passed. The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, the wind howled around the house. And somewhere deep down, a plan started forming. Not just a plan to confront them, but a plan to make them understand what it felt like to be powerless. To feel the weight of consequences. I sipped my now cold coffee and whispered to myself, this Christmas, things are going to change. And I knew deep in my bones that change would not be easy. That my relationship with Michael might fracture forever. But the truth? I didn't care anymore. Because love without respect is just weakness. And just when I thought I had control, the first unexpected text came, right in the middle of Christmas Eve. The text blinked on my phone like a neon warning. Mom, can you wire us $2,000 for a last-minute Christmas expense? Urgent. My fingers froze. Urgent. Always urgent. And always their way of nudging me closer to the edge. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. It was Christmas Eve. Everyone else was wrapping presents, sipping cocoa, singing carols. And here I was, being guilt-tripped by my own son. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Not this time, I muttered, though my voice sounded fragile even to me. I didn't respond, didn't type a single word. Instead, I opened the files I'd been keeping, every bank transfer, every note, every shady little favor they'd slipped under the radar. It was all here. Every one of their emergencies, every claim of, we're in a bind. I realized I had more power than I'd ever imagined. And that power? I was ready to use it. I remembered that Christmas morning when Michael was 12. I'd baked cinnamon rolls, wrapped tiny gifts for him, and he had said, Mom, you make Christmas magic. Back then, my heart swelled. Now, the irony cut deep. The boy who once marveled at my love was now the man who exploited it. The warmth of nostalgia collided with a surge of anger, and I knew I couldn't let him get away with it. I made a plan. Not the kind of plan you whisper to yourself. A full-scale, deliberate, calculated strategy. I'd call the lawyer first thing on Christmas morning. Evidence in hand. Bank statements, email threads, signed agreements, texts, everything. The truth was about to come out. Michael and Jennifer thought they had me cornered, but the corner? That belonged to me now. Hours passed. The house smelled like pine and cinnamon, the lights on the Christmas tree flickering in a rhythm that felt almost taunting. I poured a glass of wine and sat in silence, imagining Michael's reaction when the first letter arrived. The first call. The first moment when he realized I wasn't just a weak old woman anymore. That realization alone warmed me more than any cocoa ever could. Then came the knock. My heart jumped. I opened the door to see a car pulling away. Michael's old truck. He hadn't even said Merry Christmas yet. He hadn't expected resistance. They never did. I smiled, a small, secret smile. Inside, I felt a rush of satisfaction, the kind you only get when you finally see karma starting to stir. I settled into my armchair, looking at the snow falling outside. It felt like the world had slowed just for me. For the first time in months, I felt the tiniest spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would mark the turning point. Maybe, just maybe, Michael would finally learn what it means to face consequences. I picked up my phone again. Another message, from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. A photo of the signed mortgage documents. My heart skipped. Michael had pushed too far. He thought he was untouchable. He was about to find out he wasn't. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about respect, legacy, and something far darker than either of us had expected. Christmas morning arrived like a whisper. The snow outside had piled up overnight, muffling the world in a soft, deceptive calm. I poured myself a cup of coffee, hands trembling just a little. Not from age, but from anticipation. Today was the day. Michael thought he'd have the upper hand, that I'd cave under guilt or nostalgia. He had no idea. I called the lawyer. The voice on the other end sounded cheerful, almost mocking in its holiday cheer. "Merry Christmas," I said flatly. "We need to move fast. I want everything ready by the afternoon. Bank statements, wire transfers, property deeds, every last thing." By noon, the documents were in order. Evidence stacked neatly, like ammunition. My heart raced as I imagined Michael's face when he realized this wasn't just a fight over money. This was about justice, about respect, about making him understand that you don't break someone's trust without consequences. I remembered that morning 10 years ago when Michael had gotten his first real job. He hugged me tight, promising to make me proud. I'd believed him. I'd given him every chance, every opportunity, never imagining he'd turn it all into leverage against me. Every lie, every emergency, every sneaky transfer of assets, it all came flooding back. And now, it was payback time. The phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "Mom, can we come by later? We want to celebrate Christmas with you." Celebrate. After everything. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to reply, to keep up appearances. But part of me, the part that remembered every betrayal, knew better. I typed, "I'll be busy today. Maybe another time." Hours later, I heard footsteps crunching in the snow. Michael's truck. I knew it without looking. He probably thought he could intimidate me, that showing up in person would sway me. But I stayed calm, sat back in my chair, eyes on the glowing tree. Let him come. The knock on the door was heavy, impatient. I opened it. "Merry Christmas, Mom," he said, voice smooth, confident. "Let's talk." I smiled politely. "I don't think we need to talk today," I said, stepping aside to let him in. He froze, scanning the room. That's when I handed him the envelope. Thick, bulging. Bank statements, property deeds, legal filings, everything. His eyes widened. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. How did you? I didn't answer. I just leaned back, calm, steady. "Merry Christmas," I said softly. "I guess you didn't expect gifts like this." Michael went pale. I watched him crumple inside, the same boy who once sat on my lap, now trembling under the weight of his own arrogance. He realized what I realized long ago. Blood ties don't guarantee loyalty. And respect? Respect is earned. I stepped outside after he left, the cold biting my cheeks. The snow sparkled under the noon sun, peaceful. But I knew this peace was fragile. The real battle had just begun. Michael might have underestimated me once, but he wouldn't again. Little did I know, what started as a Christmas confrontation was about to unleash a chain of events that would shock everyone and expose a secret even darker than his betrayal. By the time night fell, the house felt empty, yet charged, like the calm before a storm. Christmas lights flickered against the walls, reflecting off the ornaments, casting shadows that danced like silent witnesses. I sat alone with my coffee, replaying Michael's face over and over, shock, fear, disbelief. He had underestimated me, just like he had every time I trusted him. But tonight, I realized the fight was bigger than money. This was about legacy, about sending a message she could never ignore. I glanced at the clock. Almost midnight. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring and thoughts echo louder. That's when I got the call. The lawyer. Calm, professional, but there was a tension beneath the surface. "You're going to want to sit down for this, sir. I mean, Ma." I gripped the armrest. "What is it?" He cleared his throat. "There's something unusual in Michael's recent financials. Large transfers to offshore accounts. Some linked to businesses he's never mentioned. It seems he's been hiding more than you know." My stomach twisted. All this time, I thought I was only fighting for my dignity, my property, my pension. But it was bigger. He was involved in schemes that could ruin him legally, financially, and socially. And somehow, I was right in the center of it. Not as a victim, but as a shield he never expected. I sank back in my chair, staring at the Christmas tree. The ornaments glimmered like tiny warnings. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine, almost mocking in its serenity. Michael wasn't just arrogant, he was reckless, and I had the power to expose it all. I thought back to our Christmas mornings, years ago. When he was a kid, shaking presents, cheeks red with excitement. Back then, the magic was simple. Love, trust, family. And now, all those memories were poisoned with betrayal. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I drafted an email to the authorities, detailing what I had discovered. I included the evidence, everything meticulously organized. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. A way to make Michael face the consequences of his choices. And maybe, just maybe, to remind him that respect can't be bought, borrowed, or stolen, it has to be earned. The snow outside was falling harder now, thick flakes blanketing the driveway. I watched it fall, thinking about the irony. Christmas, a day meant for peace, had become the stage for exposure, confrontation, and the unraveling of lies. Yet somehow, it felt right. Poetic, even. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Michael. "Mom, I need to talk. It's urgent." I didn't reply. I just smiled. He would learn soon enough that the hardest lessons aren't taught in classrooms, they're handed out by life itself. But nothing could prepare me for the secret he had kept hidden all these years. A truth buried so deep that even I, after decades of vigilance, couldn't have imagined it. And this revelation would turn everything upside down. Christmas morning arrived quietly, snow blanketing the neighborhood in an eerie, perfect white. Inside, my house smelled of pine and burnt sugar from the cookies I'd baked the night before. But there was no laughter, no warmth from Michael, just the heavy anticipation of what was about to unfold. I had spent the night reviewing every document, every account, every hidden trail he left behind. Every misstep he made had a consequence, and today, those consequences would meet him head on. The doorbell rang. I didn't flinch. Michael stood there, coat dusted with snow, eyes wide, face pale. Mom, we need to talk. He sounded smaller than ever, like a child who realized the toy he broke was irreplaceable. I let him in, offered him nothing but a chair. The cookies sat untouched on the table. Sit, I said. My voice was calm, colder than the winter air outside. He tried to speak, then stopped. He opened his mouth again. I didn't mean... I raised a hand. Save it. I know everything, Michael. About the transfers, about the hidden accounts, about the risks you dumped on me. You thought you were clever. You thought you could manipulate me because I'm old. Because I'm soft. But you underestimated me. His face shifted, shock turning into fear. Mom, I can explain... No, you can't. You don't get to explain betrayal. I reached for my laptop, opened the folders of evidence I'd submitted to the authorities. This Christmas, I won't be your victim. I won't be the old man or woman you think I am. This Christmas, justice gets its gift. I watched as his eyes darted across the screen. Recognition. Panic. Realization that everything he had built on lies was crumbling. And for the first time, he wasn't in control. I wasn't just reclaiming what was mine. I was exposing him to the world he had tried to manipulate, the people who trusted him blindly, the legal system he had ignored. He sank into the chair, shoulders slumping. Mom, I didn't think... You didn't think anyone would fight back? That respect and dignity could survive your games? I didn't wait for his response. I stood, walked to the window, and watched the snow fall. Each flake a reminder that life, like winter, could be brutal, but also cleansing. Weeks later, the authorities acted. Michael's schemes were exposed. His business faced scrutiny, fines, and public humiliation. And me? I stood alone that Christmas, sipping hot cocoa, the trees sparkling quietly behind me. I felt a strange mixture of sorrow and triumph. Sorrow for what he lost, and triumph for what I reclaimed. My dignity, my independence, my peace. I realized something profound that day. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Family ties don't promise honesty. But standing up for yourself? That's a Christmas miracle in its own right. And as I placed the final ornament on the tree, I smiled, knowing this story, painful as it was, would become my legacy. Not of riches, but of resilience. Not of power, but of truth. And somewhere in the snow, beyond the glowing lights, I felt it a quiet, undeniable certainty that even the deepest betrayal can't extinguish the light of one who refuses to break.